Fernando Alonso may well be thanking his lucky stars that this 2024 season is over and done with. A season that only seemed to bring more frustration to not only the two-time world champion, but also his team in Aston Martin, who were certainly hoping for a more competitive season than they ultimately got. The highlights of this campaign came early, with a P5 in Saudi Arabia and then a handful of P6s dotted across the calendar. But really the question has to be asked, is that really enough to feed the appetite for a two-time world champion such as Alonso? I think we all know the answer to that, and ultimately, it's a big fat no. And clearly Alonso and Aston Martin are hoping that the next season will be bringing more to them than they ultimately achieved in 2024, and hopefully some upgrades in the car is going to boost that performance, especially when you consider how 2023 begun. Of course, everyone remembers early doors of 2023. Alonso really was the closest guy to Verstappen and co in the Red Bulls, and even scored a bunch of podiums early on, and got a couple of second place finishes as well. And at that point, it was all looking rosy for Aston Martin and Alonso's relationship, and the future really did seem bright. And heading into that 2024 season, people were thinking if Aston Martin can get the upgrades right, much like McLaren did halfway through that 2023 season, then there's no reason why Aston Martin couldn't be competitive. Especially when you consider that Aston Martin had the new wind tunnel, they've got the new finance power that obviously their team hadn't had before with Lawrence Stroll and co backing the team. It really did look like Aston Martin had a huge opportunity heading into 2024. However, that wasn't to be the case. Fernando was the best of the rest, picking up 70 points across the entirety of the season and doing a pretty good job with subpar machinery. But to be fair, is that what we're expecting of a team of the size of Aston Martin? With the factory that they've got, the facilities they've got, and the people they've been bringing in over the past couple of years? The answer is certainly no. And it isn't what Alonso signed up for, really, when he wants to be in the mix for more podiums. Hell, he probably wants a race win sooner rather than later, if not fighting for that elusive third world championship. And we all know the top of the F1 grid has been falling over itself over the past year, ever since Red Bull's dominance has come to an end around that Miami time. It's been really difficult for someone to win 2-3 races in a row, much less have the dominance of what Red Bull had. And of course, McLaren have had a miraculous rise over the past 2 years, starting from basically the bottom at the start of the 2023 season, all the way through to the end of 2024, becoming the Constructors' Champions. And then you've also got Ferrari, who only finished 14 points behind them this season, and Mercedes are on the up as well, and Red Bull certainly aren't going anywhere. And let's not forget, in terms of the mid-pack, Alpine have suddenly woken up over the past few races, and they'll be looking to take that momentum into 2025, and maybe challenging Aston Martin for that 5th place. So at the moment, the future doesn't really seem that rosy. And you also have to look at some of Alonso's comments during the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. He was heard over team radio complaining about the fact that the Aston Martin hadn't fixed the straight line pace of that car since the beginning of the season. And when Alonso gets frustrated, we all know he isn't one to hide his feelings. We all know about his time at McLaren with the GP2 engine. We know about his time even with Ferrari when there was issues with the car, or even his first stint with McLaren when he was logging heads with Hamilton. There's a history there that when Alonso gets upset and is angry, it tends to fall apart quite quickly. And then you lump in the fact that Aston Martin have brought in 3 or 4 upgrade packages over the course of the 2024 season, and it's done nothing. There's been no increase in pace. There's been no competitiveness there in the car that clearly they were expecting to see from the upgrades. It just didn't come. And again, going back to the amount of resources they will have put into those upgrades and what they've got going on behind the scenes, it's quite simply astounding that not even a little bit of progression has happened in the 2024 season. Which, of course, leads me to the main question of this video. Can Alonso and Aston Martin survive another season like 2024 in 2025? And the honest answer is quite simply, I don't think it can. We're all aware of the fact that Alonso is running out of time very quickly to be able to stay competitive. The guy is in his mid-40s. He's somehow holding back the 100% win record of time, eking at all of us as time goes on and eking away at his skills. He's still a top-notch F1 driver. If you put him in a McLaren today, I guarantee he'll be winning races and hitting podiums almost every week. But the problem is, with the way the car operates and with the lack of straight line pace that it has, there's no way on earth Aston Martin, as it currently stands, can make themselves competitive without some sudden rejuvenation in the next year or two. And unless something like that drastically happens, I don't think Alonso and co are going to be good bedfellows by the end of 2025. Now, don't get me wrong, Aston Martin have certainly been making the right moves in the background. You've got the likes of Adrian Newey coming in March, who, again, won't be able to make an immediate impact on the car, but his expertise will certainly help the team heading into 2026. And I think that's where Aston Martin clearly are putting their eggs in the basket. Now, whether or not Alonso's going to be happy sitting in that car for another year while it's dragging its heels to get across the finish line, time will only tell. But of course, we all know 2026 is a huge opportunity for all the teams up and down the grid to get themselves in gear and to hit the ground running with the new regs. But then, of course, like we've mentioned before a couple of times already, they also have the mega factory that they've got now and the wind tunnel near Silverstone, which should really optimize their operations and make them probably one of, if not be in the middle of the top 3 or 4 constructors in terms of facilities. But of course, with the car the way it is, if Fernando's going to get anything out of a race, he's relying on something happening in front of him. He can't do anything himself to change that outcome. He's relying on maybe a crash from maybe, a George Russell or a Max Verstappen colliding into each other, or, one of the McLaren's engines going kaput. He's relying on something in front of him to happen to get that Aston Martin anywhere near a big points haul. And then you take into consideration the fact that next year you've got McLaren are going to take another step forward. Red Bull are going to have more wind tunnel time now. You've got Ferrari hitting on all cylinders seemingly, and they'll have Lewis Hamilton in their grid as well. And that's not even to mention Mercedes, who are seemingly starting to figure out this car 4 seasons in. So, again, the top teams are all taking a step forward, and Aston Martin just seem to be standing still. And the middle of the pack is even taking a step forward. You've got Alpine zipping forward now. Even Kick, over the past couple of races, have looked quick and have scored points. So Aston Martin really need to find something in this off-season if they're going to take anything of a step forward in 2025. And that's where I think the issues are going to come. Unless they show Alonso that 2026 is going to be a stellar year, I think we might see the Fernando of old when he's frustrated and angry and basically doesn't care anymore about what happens at the team. He signed a contract with them for obviously a couple more years early this year. But we all know in F1, contracts don't really mean a lot if the team wants rid of the driver or if the driver wants out. They will find a way to go their separate ways. Now, is it really the right option for Fernando to do that? Probably not, because none of the big seats are going to be available, I would imagine, unless maybe a Red Bull shenanigan happens again and maybe, Perez, Lawson, or whoever is going to have that second seat gets kicked out and Alonso suddenly becomes available. Then maybe he fancies that challenge and Red Bull go, hey, why not? We'll put him in the car for a season and see what happens. But I do think that Aston have to show Alonso something is coming in terms of performance in 2026. And having Adrian Newey there will help that. If there is a guy on the grid that you want designing that 2026 car, it's probably Adrian Newey. The other positive sign that Aston have going for them is that Toto and co at Mercedes have been showing some positive signs about that 2026 engine. Of course, we all know what happened in 2014 with the Mercedes engine. It sparked an era of dominance that we've never really seen before. And if Mercedes get it right again, then Aston will have a big piece of the puzzle already solved in a brand new swanky Mercedes engine. And with McLaren being able to produce the car that they have on their own terms, not necessarily having to rely on a load of parts from other teams, that shows a good sign to Aston Martin that positive things can come from being a customer engine team. So, again, it's not all doom and gloom for Aston Martin, but it certainly needs some miraculous turnarounds, of which we've seen recently from McLaren can happen, but it's going to happen soon, and they've got to show Fernando there is something in this car over the next year, I think, to appease this build-up of frustration that's clearly happening in the paddock. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think Fernando Alonso is a true legend of the sport and is someone that brings entertainment to the masses, whether it's through his driving or his personality or his radio comms. He always has something to bring to the table. And 2025 could certainly be an interesting watch. Do you think he'll wait until 2026, or do you think he's going to get out of Dodge as quickly as possible? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And for more F1 content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it today, and I'll see you on the next one.